I had spent countless months preparing for my daughter's arrival, Aurora. Every tiny sock was tucked away with care, every blanket gently folded, and lullabies practiced softly in a once quiet room now filled with promise. After enduring years of infertility and the heartbreak of 2 miscarriages, I dared to believe that life was finally showing me mercy. And then she came, Aurora. Perfect in every way. She had my dimples, her father's brilliant eyes, and a laugh so delicate it reminded me of wind chimes stirred by spring breeze. She brought light back into my world, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt whole again. But fate has a cruel way of rewriting joy. At just 6 months old, Aurora grew ill. What began as a mild fever, something the doctors initially brushed off, spiraled rapidly. Within days, she was in the ICU. The steady hum of machines filled the air, nurses moved swiftly, and quiet prayers floated through the waiting room like ghosts. I never left her side. I read to her, I sang to her, I clung to her tiny hand as if my love could keep her tethered to this world. On the 7th morning, as golden light trickled through the blinds, her little heart gave out. She slipped away. There are no words for that kind of pain. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. My entire world collapsed. In that moment, I needed my family more than I ever had before. But they weren't there. My brother, Jordan, called once. Just once. My parents had promised to come be with me, to help me survive the unimaginable. But at the last minute, they cancelled. Why? Because Jordan threw an impromptu pool party to celebrate his promotion, and they chose that over my daughter's funeral. Yes, a pool party. They skipped their granddaughter's farewell for champagne and celebration by the water. The day of the service, I sat alone except for my husband and a few close friends. No call from my parents. No flowers. Not even a message. As though Aurora had never existed. As though my grief wasn't convenient enough for their calendar. I stood in the chapel holding my baby's urn, eyes locked on the empty seats I'd saved for them. I cried not just for Aurora, but for the bitter realization that I had never truly mattered to them, not when compared to Jordan. 2 days later, they sent a text. We thought it would be too painful to see you like that. Hope you understand. Jordan's party was already planned. We'll come visit next month when things settle. Next month? I didn't respond. I didn't scream. I didn't plead with them to see the cruelty of their decision. That night, I sat at my desk, not to write a reply, but to draft something else entirely. Not words of pain, but a plan. Quiet. Focused. Unforgiving. Because if they could prioritize comfort over my daughter's goodbye, then I could choose peace over their presence. And what they didn't know was that I wasn't just mourning, I was evolving. Grief was changing me. I was becoming something new. Something stronger. After Aurora's funeral, I pulled away from everyone, even my husband, for a time. But I didn't vanish. I rebuilt myself in silence. I threw myself into a dream I had placed on hold long ago, a non-profit named after my grandmother, who had spent her life as a pediatric nurse. I called it Aurora's Light. The foundation offered free grief counseling and urgent care support to single mothers and families facing the loss of a child. It began modestly. Virtual sessions. Small fundraising dinners. But word spread quickly. Grieving mothers found solace and strength in our space. Influencers, pediatric doctors, therapists, and hospitals began sharing our mission. Donations began to pour in. 2 local news outlets featured our story. A month later, a national morning show reached out. When I stepped in front of the cameras, I was trembling, nerves fraying at the edges, but I stood tall, proud, and steady. I didn't tell the world about the heartbreak that took my daughter. I spoke instead about the light she left behind. What my parents never realized during those long, silent months was that I had inherited something else, something they had forgotten even existed. My great-aunt Lillian had passed away quietly 2 years prior. She never had children, but we had shared a quiet closeness, a bond deeper than anyone knew. In her will, she left everything to me, a sprawling estate, a sizable trust, real estate, stocks, the kind of wealth that could change everything. I hadn't touched a single cent, until one evening, scrolling aimlessly, I stumbled across an Instagram photo. My parents, poolside at Jordan's mansion, champagne in hand, grinning ear to ear. The caption read, "Celebrating family, the best kind, obviously." That was the moment something inside me cracked. With part of my inheritance, I hired a private investigator, not for scandal, but for strategy. I had him research ownership records for a specific private resort, the one my family rented year after year for their lavish gatherings. It was the same resort where they took holiday photos the previous Christmas, photos I hadn't been asked to join. Quietly, through a shell corporation, I purchased the entire property. Every villa. Every contract. Even the catering and security services. Then I waited. 4 months later, Jordan sent out a mass family invite for his biggest summer bash yet, a weekend retreat at our favorite resort, complete with live music, gourmet brunches, and as he mockingly wrote in the email thread, no emotional drama this time. My parents responded with hearts and exclamation marks. I RSVP'd too, only not to attend. Just to observe. On the day of the event, I arrived early, checking into the main villa with a few trusted non-profit colleagues and a film crew that had been chronicling the rise of Aurora's light. None of them knew why we were there until we pulled up to the gates. I calmly introduced myself to the resort manager. He paused, blinking in surprise. Then nodded. My name was on every deed and document. I now owned the place. The next morning, Jordan and my parents pulled up in designer sunglasses, fake smiles plastered on their faces, ready for their champagne brunch. They didn't even make it past the gate. Sorry, the guard said politely. This weekend is a private booking. No outside guests permitted. Jordan scoffed. Do you even know who I am? I'm Jordan Sterling. My family comes here every year. The guard glanced at his tablet. Yes, sir. Your name was on the guest list, until last night. Removed by who? My mother asked, already agitated. That's when I stepped out onto the front steps, wearing a simple white dress. I didn't say a word. Behind me, my staff carried boxes labeled Aurora's Light. The film crew raised their cameras. I had your names removed, I said evenly. You weren't there for Aurora's goodbye, so I thought it only fair. My mother blinked. You bought this place? No, I replied, steady as ever. I own it. They erupted, my father yelling, Jordan mocking with a bitter laugh, but it didn't matter. The security team, under contract with me, gently escorted them off the property. As they turned to leave, I handed each of them a card. It read, "This weekend was for family. You made it clear I was never part of yours. So I created one of my own." That night, beneath the open sky, we held a candlelight vigil on the lawn. Dozens of grieving parents joined us, mothers and fathers who had lost their children, too. We cried. We embraced. We shared memories and honored the names that still lived in our hearts. In those moments, I understood something profound. I hadn't lost Aurora. Not truly. She was in the stars. In the compassion we created. In every brave, quiet step I had taken to rebuild without those who failed me. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need their approval. I had something greater. And the aftermath? It was swift and sharper than I could have imagined. Jordan tried to save face online, posting cryptic quotes about betrayal and loyalty, hinting at the ungrateful people who forget who helped them rise. But it was too late. Screenshots of his poolside posts were already being shared alongside footage of our emotional memorial under the stars. Public sympathy shifted overnight. Sponsors pulled out of his business events. His brand took a nosedive. The next time he tried to book a venue, they politely declined, fully booked. As for my parents, they went quiet. No anger. No excuses. Just silence. For once, they had nothing left to say. I thought that would be the end of it. Until one rainy afternoon, a formal letter arrived, not handwritten, not personal. It was from their lawyer, requesting a meeting. Not for reconciliation, but for a financial lifeline. They were drowning in debt. Years of excessive spending, luxurious vacations, and bankrolling Jordan's ventures had caught up to them. Worse still, the home they were about to lose wasn't even in their name. It was in mine. Apparently, when I was 21, my father had quietly transferred the deed to me to avoid a tax complication. He never told me. I only discovered it while reviewing paperwork for my non-profit's expansion. So now I had a decision to make. I could sell the house. I could save it. I could take it back. But I did none of those things, at least, not right away. Instead, I invited them to my office for a meeting. They walked in looking older, smaller somehow. My mother hid behind dark sunglasses. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Jordan didn't come. He had rebranded and cut ties. I didn't greet them. I didn't offer tea or fake smiles. I simply slid a piece of paper across the table. "What's this?" my mother whispered. "A letter," I said. "It says, 'I forgive you, but I don't owe you anything.' And below that, it's a formal property transfer." Their eyes widened. "You're giving it back?" my father asked. I shook my head. "Not to you." "Then, who?" "To Aurora's light," I answered softly. "The house will become a grief retreat, a sanctuary for parents with nowhere else to go. A place for healing. For peace. Not shame." My mother gasped. "You can't. That's our home." "No," I replied gently. "It never was. Not for me. You made sure of that the day you chose cocktails over a coffin." They cried, finally. Real tears. But I didn't move. I didn't hug them. I let the silence stay. I let them feel what I had carried, the hollow ache of being invisible. And then, I offered one final grace. "You're welcome at the ribbon cutting," I said quietly as they turned to leave. "As guests. But don't bring champagne. Bring kindness." That night, I sat on the porch of the old house, now ours in the truest sense. A soft breeze stirred the trees. I lit a small candle for Aurora, and as her favorite lullaby danced on the wind, the flame flickered, then burned strong. The house was no longer stained by betrayal. It had found purpose. And so had I.